Thud. That wasn't a loud sound. It was dull, muffled. It was the sound of a $2,000 Italian leather boot connecting with a human rib cage. Zosia didn't scream. She didn't have the air for it. The breath left her lungs in a sharp, painful wheeze. She crumbled, her knees hitting the white marble floor of the Emerald Bistro. The open-air restaurant was the crown jewel of them all, a place where people paid $50 for a salad and $300 for a bottle of wine. Zosia? She was just the stain on the floor. She was on her hands and knees, clutching a rough sponge. The smell of lemon bleach was sharp in her nose, mixing with the metallic taste of blood biting the inside of her cheek. She had been scrubbing a wine stain. Red Merlot. It looked like blood on the pristine white tiles. And then she felt the second impact. Not a kick this time. A shove. A boot tip digging into her hip. "Move," a voice said. Not angry, just annoyed. Bored. "You ruined my stride." Zosia looked up. Through the haze of pain, she saw him. Dante, the son of the city's deputy mayor. He was holding a phone in one hand, a lit cigarette in the other, even though smoking was banned indoors. He looked down at her like she was a piece of chewing gum stuck to the bottom of his shoe. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask if she was okay. He looked at his shoe. He scowled at a scuff mark on the leather. "Look at this!" Dante sneered, angling his foot toward his friends. Trash. Absolute trash. He wasn't talking about the floor. He was talking about her. Zosia's ribs burned. A hot, sharp line of fire wrapping around her torso. But she didn't cry. Not yet. Crying was a luxury for people who could afford to lose their jobs. Zosia needed this shift. She needed the tips. She needed to pay for the heat in her studio apartment that hadn't worked since November. So, she did what she always did. She swallowed the pain. She made herself small. She tried to become invisible again. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling just a little. "I was just cleaning the—" "I don't care what you were doing," Dante interrupted, flicking ash near her hand. "You're in the way. You people always are." Zosia tried to stand. Her legs felt like water. The diners were watching now. You know how they watch. Not with help in their eyes, but with curiosity. Like they were watching a show. A car crash. Someone pulled out a phone to record. They saw a black woman in a faded, oversized waitress uniform. Her hair frizzy from the humidity of the kitchen, clutching her side. They saw a rich man in a bespoke suit towering over her, and nobody moved. "Sir, please," Zosia said, trying to keep her dignity. She adjusted her apron. "It was an accident. You were on your phone. That was the wrong thing to say." Dante's eyes narrowed. The boredom vanished, replaced by a cold, ugly flare of ego. He stepped closer. He invaded her space, smelling of expensive cologne and whiskey. "My phone?" He laughed. It was a cruel sound, sharp. "You think this is my fault? You think you, the help, get to tell me what I was doing?" He picked up a glass of water from the nearest table. Ice water. Condensation dripping down the sides. Zosia flinched. She knew what was coming, but she couldn't move fast enough. Splash. The water hit her face. Cold. Shocking. It soaked her hair, dripping down her neck, soaking into the collar of her uniform. The ice cubes hit the floor with a clatter. "Now you're wet," Dante said, smiling. "Maybe you should clean that up too." The humiliation hit harder than the kick. It settled deep in her chest, heavy and cold. This was the reality of her life. Invisible until she was a problem. Ignored until she was a target. Then, the manager, Mr. Henderson, came running out. Finally, help. Zosia let out a breath. Mr. Henderson knew she was a good worker. He knew she took double shifts. He knew she never complained. "Mr. Dante," Henderson gasped, looking terrified. I am so sorry. Is everything all right? He didn't look at Zosia. He looked at Dante's shoes. This incompetent staff member, Dante said, waving a hand at Zosia like she was a bad smell. She tripped me, assaulted me, practically. And look at my suit. There's water everywhere. Henderson turned to Zosia. His face wasn't kind. It was hard, panicked. He saw the bruise forming on her cheek. He saw the water dripping from her hair. But he did the math. Zosia was an $8 an hour waitress. Dante was a whale. He spent thousands here every week. Zosia, Henderson snapped. Pack your things. Zosia blinked. The water dripped into her eyes. Mr. Henderson, he kicked me. He poured water on me. You caused a disturbance, Henderson said, his voice loud enough for the diners to hear. Performance management. We don't tolerate clumsiness here. Get out. Don't bother clocking out. Fired. Just like that. Zosia looked around the room. Dozens of eyes. Men in suits. Women in pearls. They looked away. They went back to their salads. They went back to their wine. She was alone. Truly, deeply alone. She didn't beg. That's the thing about Zosia. She was poor. She was tired. She was hurting. But she wasn't pathetic. She nodded, once, a sharp, jerky motion. She bent down, picked up her bucket, and turned to leave. Her side screamed in pain with every step. That's right, Dante called out behind her. Walk away. Go back to whatever gutter you crawled out of. He laughed. His friends laughed. And that's when the music stopped. It wasn't just the music. The air in the restaurant changed. You know that feeling when a thunderstorm is about to break? When the pressure drops and the birds stop singing? That heavy, static silence? That happened now. The chatter in the mall died down. The clinking of silverware stopped. The heavy glass doors at the entrance of the bistro didn't just open. They were held open. Two men in black suits stepped in first. They didn't look like mall security. They looked like soldiers. Earpieces, scars, dead eyes. They scanned the room and then stepped aside. And then he walked in. Joon-ho Park. The city whispered his name. They called him the Dragon, the head of the park syndicate. They said he owned the police, the ports, and the pavement under your feet. He was a ghost story rich people told each other to remind themselves they weren't the top of the food chain. He was beautiful, in a terrifying way. High cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. Hair black as oil, slicked back. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin, tailored to hide the holster under his left arm. He didn't walk. He glided. He moved past the host stand without looking at it. He moved past the terrified Mr. Henderson. His eyes were locked on one thing, Zosia. She was frozen near the exit, her bucket in hand. She saw him coming. She thought she was hallucinating. She had seen this man before, years ago, in the shadows of her father's old shop, but he looked different now, harder. Joon-ho stopped 3 feet from her. He looked at the water dripping from her hair. He looked at the dirt on her knees. He looked at the way she was holding her ribs. His face didn't move. He didn't frown. He didn't yell. But his eyes went flat, dead black, a shark smelling blood in the water. He slowly turned his head toward Dante. Dante had stopped laughing. He was holding his glass, looking confused. He recognized the suit. He recognized the danger. Mr. Park? Dante stammered. His arrogance evaporated like steam. I didn't know you were dining here today. We were just handling a little pest control. Joon-ho didn't speak. He walked toward Dante. The silence in the room was suffocating. Every step was a drumbeat. He reached Dante's table. Dante stood up, trying to offer a hand to shake. I'm Dante. My father is councilman. Joon-ho didn't take the hand. He reached out, his movement a blur. and grabbed a heavy crystal wine decanter from the center of the table. And then, violence. Pure, efficient, mechanical violence. Crack. Joon-ho swung the decanter. He didn't aim for the head. He aimed for the knee. The sound of the heavy crystal impacting the kneecap was sickeningly loud. It echoed off the marble walls. Dante screamed. It was a high, thin sound. He collapsed, clutching his shattered leg, writhing on the floor. The wine from the decanter splashed over him, mixing with the blood starting to seep through his expensive trousers. Joon-ho didn't stop. He stepped on Dante's chest, pinning him to the floor. He leaned down, his voice a low, terrifying rumble. It wasn't a shout. It was a whisper that carried across the entire room. "You have a loud voice," Joon-ho said, "but your bones are very quiet when they break." Dante sobbed, snot running down his face. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Joon-ho tilted his head. "You didn't know that you breathe because I allow it?" He pressed harder. Dante wheezed. Joon-ho looked up at the bodyguards. He flicked his fingers. Two of the men moved instantly, grabbing Dante by the arms and dragging him, screaming and broken, out of the restaurant. They didn't ask permission. They just took him, like trash. The restaurant was dead silent. Mr. Henderson was shaking so hard he had to lean against the wall. Joon-ho turned back to Zosia. He walked over to her. The monster was gone. The violence in his shoulders dropped. He looked at the bucket in her hand. He reached out and gently, so gently it made the air hurt, took the bucket from her fingers and set it on the floor. Then he did the unthinkable. The dragon of the city, the man in the $5,000 suit, dropped to his knees, right there on the dirty, wet floor. He didn't care about the wine stains. He didn't care about the crowd. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief. He reached up. Zosia flinched. She expected a hit, a reflex. Joon-ho froze. A muscle in his jaw jumped. He saw the flinch. He knew what it meant. "No," he rumbled, his voice dropping an octave, deep, resonant. "Never from me. Never me." He gently dabbed the water from her chin. He wiped a smudge of dirt from her cheek. His thumb lingered on her skin. It was rough, calloused, warm. The contrast was stark, his pale hand against her dark skin. "Zosia," he said. He knew her name. How did he know her name? "Sir," Zosia whispered, "I'm fired. I have to go." "You are not fired," Joon-ho said, his eyes scanning her face, cataloging every hurt. "You cannot be fired from a building you own." Zosia blinked. "What?" Joon-ho stood up, towering over her again. But this time, it felt like shelter, not a threat. He offered her his hand, palm open, a choice. "5 years ago," he said, loud enough for Henderson to hear, "your father signed a paper. He thought it was a loan." Joon-ho stepped closer, blocking out the rest of the world, blocking out the staring diners, blocking out the shame. "It was a marriage license," he whispered. "You have been my wife for 5 years, Zosia. I stayed away because I wanted you to be free. I wanted you to have a normal life." He looked at her ribs, where Dante had kicked her. His eyes darkened again. "But clearly," he growled, "freedom is too dangerous for you. I am done waiting. This is the moment. Listen to me closely. Joon-ho just shattered a man's leg for touching her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for her side of the story. He saw her pain, and he burned the world down to fix it. This is the kind of protection that doesn't just save you, it claims you. If you want to know what happens when a king comes to collect his queen, you need to hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel. Because what Joon-ho does to the people who watched her suffer, you are not going to want to miss that. Back to the story. Zosia stared at his hand. "Wife?" she breathed. I don't. Take my hand, Yobo, Joon-ho commanded, soft but absolute. You are dirty, you are hurt, and you are done kneeling. Zosia looked at Mr. Henderson. The manager was pale, eyes wide with terror. He realized his mistake. He realized he had just fired the owner's wife. Zosia looked back at Joon-ho. She was tired of fighting. She was tired of the cold. She was tired of the bruises. She reached out. Her hand, rough from scrubbing floors, slid into his. He gripped her tight, possessive, final. Let's go home, he said. He pulled her into his side, wrapping a heavy arm around her shoulders, shielding her from the stairs. As they walked out, passing the trembling staff, Joon-ho didn't look back. But as they reached the door, he paused. He looked at one of his remaining guards. He pointed a finger at the restaurant manager. "Burn it," Joon-ho said casually. "Burn it all down." The guard nodded. Zosia gasped, looking up at him. "You can't." "I can," Joon-ho said, leading her toward the waiting black SUVs. "I told you. You were treated like trash here. So now, it is a dump. We burn the trash, Zosia." He opened the car door for her. The interior smelled of leather and safety. "Get in," he said. "Your shift is over. Forever." He lifted her. It wasn't a struggle. Zosia braced herself, expecting a grunt of effort, expecting to be handled clumsily. She was tall. She had curves. She wasn't a delicate bird. But Joon-ho picked her up like she was made of smoke. One arm under her knees, the other supporting her back, right against the solid wall of his chest. Her feet left the ground. For the first time all day, maybe for the first time in years, she wasn't holding her own weight. She instinctively grabbed his lapel to steady herself. Her fingers, rough from bleach and steel wool, curled into the expensive charcoal fabric of his suit. She smelled him then. He didn't smell like the mall. He didn't smell like the greasy fryer or the floor wax. He smelled like clean rain, sandalwood, and something sharp underneath, like iron, like the gun she knew was tucked somewhere close to her hip. "Put me down," Zosia whispered. It was a reflex, a survival instinct. You don't let dangerous men carry you. You don't let anyone carry you. Joon-ho didn't answer. He didn't even look down. He just tightened his grip, pulling her closer to his center of gravity. He stepped over the shattered glass of the wine decanter. He stepped over the mess on the floor. They walked out of the Emerald Bistro. The silence followed them. Imagine the picture. A man who looked like he owned the city, walking through a high-end mall, carrying a black woman in a stained, wet waitress uniform. Her apron was torn. Her shoes were cheap, non-slip work clogs with the tread worn down. Her hair was starting to curl uncontrollably from the humidity of the water Dante had thrown on her. And he held her like she was the crown jewels. People stared. Of course they stared. Shoppers with their designer bags stopped walking. A security guard put a hand to his radio, saw Joon-ho's face, and immediately dropped his hand. No one moved to stop him. No one asked if she was okay. They were too afraid of the dragon to ask about the girl. Zosia pressed her face into his shoulder, not for comfort, but to hide. She felt the heat rising in her neck. The shame was still there, sitting heavy in her stomach. She was dirty. She was humiliated. And now, she was a spectacle. But Joon-ho didn't speed up. He didn't rush to the exit to hide her. He walked at a measured, deliberate pace. He walked like a king parading his victory. He wanted them to see. He wanted every single person in that mall to see that she was with him. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask for her side of the story. He didn't ask if she provoked the rich boy. He just destroyed the man who hurt her. If you want that kind of blind loyalty, like this video and subscribe to After Hours Romance Stories right now. Because trust me, what happens in the car is going to change everything. They reached the exit. The automatic doors slid open, and the humidity of the city hit them, but they didn't step onto the curb. A black SUV was waiting. It was huge, an Escalade, but wider, heavier. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like black mirrors. The paint was matte, absorbing the light. It looked like a tank dressed up as a luxury car. A driver in a dark suit was already standing by the rear door. He opened it before Joon-ho even got close. Joon-ho didn't toss her in. He leaned in, placing her gently on the cream-colored leather seat. He was careful with her ribs. He moved with a precision that was terrifyingly gentle. He adjusted her skirt so it wouldn't ride up. Then he climbed in next to her. The heavy door slammed shut. Thunk. The sound was solid, airtight. The noise of the city, the traffic, the sirens, the people vanished instantly. Inside the car, it was dead silent. The air was cool, filtered, smelling of new leather. Zosia pressed herself against the door on her side. Her heart was hammering against her bruised ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was the only sound she could hear. The lock clicked. Panic, real, cold panic washed over her. The adrenaline from the restaurant was fading, leaving behind the terrifying reality of the situation. She was in a car with the Park Syndicate. She knew who they were. Everyone in the neighborhood knew who they were. They ran the numbers. They ran the docs. If you borrowed money from them and didn't pay, you disappeared. She hadn't borrowed money, but her father had. Her hand flew to her neck. She grabbed the small, silver chain she always wore. It was thin, cheap metal that turned her skin green if she wore it in the shower, but it held a tiny, tarnished cross. Her grandmother's cross. It was her anchor, her Trojan symbol. When the world got too loud, or the bills got too high, or the men got too handsy, she held on to that cross. It was the only thing she owned that no one could take away. She gripped it now until the edges dug into her palm. "Where are we going?" Zosia asked. Her voice sounded small in the quiet cabin. "Please, I just want to go home. I live on 4th and Main. You can just drop me at the corner." Joon-ho didn't look at her. He was looking forward, watching the partition between them and the driver. He reached into a cooler built into the center console and pulled out a bottle of water. Glass bottle. Imported. He cracked the seal and held it out to her. "Drink," he said. His voice was a low rumble in the small space. "You are shaking." Zosia stared at the water. "I don't want water. I want to know where you are taking me." "Drink," he repeated. Not a request, a command, but soft. Zosia took the bottle. Her hands were trembling so bad the water sloshed inside. She took a sip. It was cold. It hurt her throat, but it grounded her. "My father," Zosia said, the realization hitting her like a cold wave. "This is about my father, isn't it? The store, the debts." She looked at Joon-ho's profile. He was staring out the window as the city blurred by. He looked like a statue carved out of granite. Beautiful, cold, unmovable. "He died 4 years ago," Zosia said, her voice rising with desperation. "I paid what I could. I gave everything I had. The shop is gone. The house is gone. I don't have anything else to give you." She looked down at her uniform. "I have tips in my pocket, maybe $40. Take it. Please, just let me out." Joon-ho turned his head slowly. He looked at her hands, clutching the water bottle and that cheap silver cross. His eyes lingered on her knuckles. They were swollen, red from scrubbing floors without gloves. He looked at the burn mark on her forearm from the oven last week. He didn't see a debtor. He saw a survivor, and he looked angry. Not at her, but for her. "You think this is a kidnapping," he stated. It wasn't a question. "You put me in a car with locked doors," Zosia snapped, her fear turning into a spark of anger. "You beat a man half to death in front of me. What am I supposed to think?" He broke your ribs, Joon-ho said. I broke his knee. That is a fair trade. That's not how the world works, Zosia cried out. She winced as the movement pulled at her side. You can't just hurt people like that. The police work for me, Joon-ho cut her off. Calm. Factual. The man driving this car is an ex-detective. The ambulance that picked up Mr. Dante is owned by my company. The world works exactly how I say it works, Zosia. He leaned back into the leather seat, crossing one leg over the other. The fabric of his trousers pulled tight over his thigh. He looked so relaxed, so in control, while she was falling apart. I am not kidnapping you, he said, his eyes drifting back to the window. I am extracting you. Extracting me from what? Zosia asked. My job? You got me fired. I removed you from a hostile environment. He corrected. You were unsafe. You were undervalued. You were kicked like a stray dog. I do not allow my assets to be treated that way. Assets. The word hung in the air. Cold. Transactional. Zosia gripped her cross tighter. I am not an asset. I am a person. I am a human being. I know what you are, Joon-ho said softly. He reached out. Zosia flinched again, pressing herself against the door. He stopped his hand midair. He waited. He waited until she stopped breathing, until she looked at his hand. He wasn't reaching for her. He was reaching for the seat heater button on her side. He pressed it. Your uniform is wet, he said. You will get cold. The seat began to warm up beneath her. The heat seeped through the thin, damp fabric of her dress. It felt good. It felt incredible against her aching back. It was such a small thing. A button. A little bit of warmth. But it broke her. Tears pricked her eyes. She fought them back. She wouldn't cry in front of him. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. She was Zosia. She survived the eviction. She survived the shelter. She survived the winter with no heat. She didn't need a gangster's seat warmer, but she didn't turn it off. Where are we going? She asked again. Quieter this time. Joon-ho checked his watch. A silver timepiece that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. The Sky Fortress, he said. Zosia froze. Everyone knew the Sky Fortress. The penthouse at the top of the obsidian tower. The highest point in the city. It was a literal fortress. Private elevators. Armed guards. No one went in unless invited. And no one came out unless allowed. No, Zosia shook her head. No, I can't go there. Take me to my apartment, please. Your apartment is not secure, Joon-ho said. Dante has friends. His father has influence. They know where you live. By tonight, they would have sent someone to teach you a lesson, to silence you. He turned to face her fully. His dark eyes locked onto hers. You started a war today, Zosia, he said. Or rather, a war started around you. You cannot go back to your studio on 4th and Main. That life is gone. It ended the moment his boot touched your side. I didn't ask for this, Zosia whispered. A tear escaped, sliding down her cheek. I just wanted to clean the floor. I know, Joon-ho said. And for a second, just a split second, the mask slipped. His eyes weren't dead. They were tired. They were heavy with something that looked like regret. The innocent never ask for the war, but they always have to fight it. The car slowed down. The windows darkened even more as they entered a tunnel, a private garage. Zosia looked out the window. Concrete walls, bright, clinical lights, more men in suits standing by the elevator banks. She was trapped. She wasn't stupid. She knew what happened to women who went into the Sky Fortress. They became girlfriends, or playthings, or leverage. She wasn't going to be any of those. She looked at the door handle. She calculated the speed. If she opened it now, while they were slowing down, Joon-ho didn't look at her, but his hand moved. He placed his hand over hers, pinning it to her lap. Not hurting her, just stopping her. His hand was large, warm, encompassing hers completely. "Do not run," he said. "You are injured. You will fall." "I'd rather fall than go up there with you," Zosia said, her voice shaking but fierce. Joon-ho looked at her. He looked at the fire in her eyes. He didn't dislike it. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Good," he murmured. "Keep that anger. You will need it." The car came to a stop. The locks clicked open. But Zosia didn't move. She couldn't. She was paralyzed by the proximity. His hand was still on hers. She could feel the pulse in his wrist. Slow, steady. Unlike hers, which was racing like a trapped bird. "Why me?" she asked. It was the question that had been burning in her throat. "Why did you help me? You're the dragon. I'm nobody." Joon-ho pulled his hand away. The loss of warmth was instant. He adjusted his cufflinks. He became the boss again, the untouchable figure. "You are not nobody," he said, opening his door. "You are the only thing in this city that I haven't paid for." He stepped out. He didn't wait for her. He stood by the door, extending a hand to help her out. Zosia looked at his hand. Then she looked at the dark elevator, waiting to take her up to the sky. She had a choice. Stay in the car and wait to be dragged out, or walk. Zosia took a breath. She touched the cross at her neck one last time. She grabbed her bucket, yes. She still had the damn cleaning bucket, and she stepped out. She ignored his hand. She stood on the concrete, wobbling slightly in her worn-out shoes. Joon-ho looked at her ignored hand. He didn't look offended. He looked satisfied. "This way," he said. He walked toward the elevator. He didn't look back to see if she was following. He knew she was, because she had nowhere else to go. Zosia followed him. She walked past the guards who stared at the floor. She walked into the gold-plated elevator. As the doors closed, shutting out the world, she saw her reflection in the mirrored walls. A tall, dark woman in a dirty uniform, standing next to the devil in a charcoal suit. She looked tired. She looked scared. But for the first time in 5 years, she didn't look invisible. The elevator started to rise, and Zosia realized something terrifying. She wasn't afraid he was going to hurt her. She was afraid because, for the first time since her father died, she felt safe. And safe was a dangerous thing to feel around a monster. The elevator doors opened. Ding. It wasn't a hallway. It was the room, the Sky Fortress. Zosia stepped out onto floors made of black marble that were so polished they looked like water. She saw her own reflection staring back up at her, a smudged, dirty woman standing on a surface that cost more than her entire childhood home. The view was the first thing that hit her. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls. The entire city was spread out below them like a circuit board of gold and white lights. She could see the mall, where she had been scrubbing floors an hour ago. It looked tiny, insignificant. "Take off your shoes," Joon-ho said. He walked past her, shrugging off his suit jacket. He tossed it onto a white leather sofa that looked like it had never been sat on. Zosia hesitated. Her shoes were cheap clogs. They were covered in mall grime. She towed them off, leaving them on the mat by the elevator. Her socks were mismatched, one gray, one blue. She curled her toes, hiding them. Is this where you live?" Zosia asked. Her voice echoed in the massive, empty space. It was cold. It smelled of ozone and expensive emptiness. There were no photos, no clutter, no life, just wealth. "This is where I exist," Joon-ho corrected. He walked over to a wet bar made of backlit onyx. "Do you want whiskey or tea?" "I want answers," Zosia said. She didn't move from the entrance. She hugged her arms around her chest, protecting her bruised ribs. "You said, extracting me. You said, hostile environment. But you haven't told me why me. I'm a waitress, Mr. Park. I'm nobody. Why does the dragon care about a nobody? Joon-ho poured himself a drink, amber liquid splashing over a sphere of ice. He didn't pour one for her. He knew she wouldn't drink it. He picked up the glass and turned around. He leaned against the bar, studying her. He looked at her mismatched socks. He didn't laugh. He looked, fond. "Come here," he said. He walked toward a massive desk on the far side of the room. It was heavy dark wood, ancient and imposing. He sat behind it, placing his drink on a coaster. Zosia walked slowly across the room. She felt like she was walking to the gallows. Every step hurt her side. Joon-ho opened a drawer. He didn't rummage. He knew exactly where it was. He pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It wasn't sealed. It was old. The corners were slightly bent. He slid it across the desk toward her. The sound of paper on wood was loud in the silence. "Shh! Open it," he said. Zosia reached out. Her hand was still shaking. She picked up the envelope. It felt heavy. She pulled out the document inside. It was legal paper. Thick bond. There were stamps at the bottom. Notarized seals. She started to read. Contract of debt settlement. Parties. Marcus Williams, debtor, and the Park Syndicate, creditor. Date, October 14th, 5 years ago. Zosia's breath hitched. That date. She remembered that date. That was the day her father came home, crying tears of joy. He told her the debt was gone. He told her a miracle happened. He told her they were free. She kept reading. In exchange for the forgiveness of the principal sum of $250,000 and the protection of the Williams estate, $250,000. Zosia felt sick. She knew he gambled, but she didn't know it was that bad. The debtor hereby grants the hand of his daughter, Zosia Williams, in marriage to the eldest son of the Park family, Joon-ho Park. The room spun. Zosia blinked. She read it again. Grants the hand. Marriage. She looked at the bottom of the page. There it was. Her father's signature. Shaky, messy, but undeniable. And next to it, a sharp, precise signature in black ink. Joon-ho Park. And then, a third signature. Zosia Williams. "No," Zosia whispered. The paper shook in her hands. "No, I didn't sign this. I never signed this." She looked at the signature. It looked like hers. It was a perfect copy of her handwriting. He forged it, Zosia realized. The betrayal cut deeper than Dante's kick. Her father, the man she worked double shifts to support, the man she mourned. He had sold her, like a piece of furniture, like a cow at an auction. He was desperate, Joon-ho said quietly. He was watching her face. He wasn't enjoying this. He was waiting for the crash. The vipers were going to take his fingers, then his house, then you. "He came to me," he begged. Zosia looked up at him. Her eyes were wide, filled with horror. "So you bought me? Is that what this is? I'm a receipt?" "I accepted the contract," Joon-ho said, "to save him, and to save you." "Save me," Zosia laughed, a brittle, hysterical sound. She threw the paper back on the desk. "You call this saving me? I've been working 60 hours a week for 5 years. I've been scrubbing floors. I've been freezing in the winter. Where were you? Where was my husband then? This is the moment." The anger. Zosia isn't sad anymore. She is furious. She was sold, abandoned, and ignored. And now this man in a suit thinks he can just show up and claim her? If you are feeling Zosia's rage right now, that feeling of being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, hit that subscribe button, because Zosia is about to find out that while her father sold her, Joon-ho didn't just buy her, he studied her. "I was there," Joon-ho said. He stood up. He walked around the desk. You don't know me, Zosia spat, backing away. I have never seen you before today. You're a stranger. Am I? Joon-ho stopped. He was 5 feet away, close enough to touch, close enough to kill. I know you take your coffee black, he said. 2 sugars if you had a bad sleep. None if you are working a double. Zosia froze. I know you sleep on the left side of the bed, he continued, taking a step closer. Even though you live alone, you leave the right side empty. You put your pillows there, like you are waiting for someone. Zosia's back hit the glass wall. There was nowhere left to go. The city lights haloed around her head. I know you hate thunder, Joon-ho said, his voice dropping to that rumble again. When it storms, you sit in your bathtub with the door closed and you hum hymns, the same 3 hymns your grandmother taught you. Stop it, Zosia whispered. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought he could see it. How do you know that? I know that you walk with a limp when it rains because you twisted your ankle 3 years ago running for the bus, he said. He was right in front of her now. He placed a hand on the glass, right next to her head. He boxed her in. I know that you cry on Sundays, he whispered, because that was the day your father died. He leaned down. His face was inches from hers. She could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. You say you don't know me, Zosia, he murmured. But I know every breath you have taken for 5 years. I have been watching. I have been waiting. Why? Zosia breathed. She was terrified. This wasn't romance. This was obsession. This was a predator playing with food. If you own me, why didn't you come for me? Joon-ho looked at her mouth. Then her eyes. Because the contract said I owned you, he said. But I didn't want to own a slave. I wanted a wife. He pulled back slightly, giving her air. I gave you 5 years, he said, to live, to date, to find someone else if you wanted. I waited. I watched you struggle. I watched you fight. And every day, I saw that you were strong, stronger than my men, stronger than me. He reached out and touched the collar of her dirty uniform. But today, his voice hardened. Today, a boy kicked you. Today, you bled. He ripped the contract in half. Rip. The sound was shocking. He tore the legal paper, the proof of her slavery, right down the middle. He dropped the pieces on the floor. The debt is gone, Joon-ho said. The paper doesn't matter anymore. Zosia looked at the torn paper. So, I'm free? Joon-ho smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of the dragon. No, he said. You misunderstood. He grabbed her chin. Gently, but firmly. He forced her to look at him. I didn't tear it up because you are free, he said. I tore it up because I don't need a piece of paper to tell me what is mine anymore. He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. You are not here because of your father, Zosia. You are here because I am done watching. You are here because I am claiming you, not for the debt, but for me. Zosia trembled. She felt the heat of his body. She felt the weight of his words. She wasn't a payment anymore. She was an obsession. Go wash up, Joon-ho said, stepping back and turning toward the hallway. The master bath is to the left. There are clothes laid out for you. Burn the uniform. He walked away, picking up his whiskey. And Zosia, he called out without looking back. Yes, she whispered. Don't lock the door, he said. I have the key anyway. The bathroom was bigger than her entire apartment. That wasn't an exaggeration. Zosia stood in the doorway, clutching the silk robe he had left for her. Her eyes scanned the room, black marble floors heated from underneath. A soaking tub that looked like it was carved from a single block of white stone. It was deep, wide enough for 2 people. Steam was already rising from the water. It smelled of eucalyptus and something expensive, something earthy. Zosia took a step inside. Her knees were shaking. The adrenaline from the mall, the car ride, the revelation about the contract, it was all fading. And what was left was pain. Her ribs throbbed, a dull, grinding ache every time she took a breath. Her skin felt tight and grimy from the dried wine and the floor cleaner. She felt dirty, not just physically, but deep down, the kind of dirty that comes from being looked at like you don't matter. She walked to the mirror. She looked at herself. The uniform was ruined. Her hair was a mess. There was a bruise blooming on her cheekbone where she had hit the floor. She reached for the zipper of her dress. It was stuck. The cheap metal had bent when Dante kicked her. She tugged at it. Zip. Nothing. She tugged harder. A sharp pain shot through her side. Ah, she gasped, doubling over. She couldn't do it. She couldn't even undress herself. The tears she had been holding back started to burn her eyes again. She felt useless, broken. Knock, knock. 2 soft raps on the doorframe. Zosia spun around, clutching the front of her dress. Joon-ho was standing there. He had taken off his tie. The top 2 buttons of his white dress shirt were undone, exposing the base of his throat. He looked calm, solid. "The zipper?" he asked. He didn't ask if she was naked. He didn't look at her body with hunger. He looked at the problem. "It's stuck," Zosia whispered. She gripped her cross necklace. "I can manage." "You cannot lift your left arm past your shoulder," Joon-ho observed. "I saw you wince when you reached for the towel. Your ribs are bruised, possibly cracked." He walked into the room. The steam swirled around him. "Turn around," he said. Zosia hesitated. This was the moment the husband claimed his rights. She knew how men worked. She knew what they expected when they paid a debt. Zosia started to back away. "I just want a shower." "Turn around, Zosia," he repeated. His voice was low, not angry, just final. She turned. She held her breath. She waited for his hands to roam. She waited for him to push her against the counter, but he didn't. She felt his knuckles brush her spine, cool skin against her feverish heat. He touched the zipper. With a quick, precise movement snap, he broke the mechanism. The dress loosened instantly. "Step out of it," he said. He turned his back to her. He walked over to the tub and tested the water with his hand. Zosia stared at his broad back. He was giving her privacy. In a room where he held all the power, he was giving her the one thing she couldn't afford: dignity. She let the dress fall to the floor. She kicked it away. She stepped out of her worn-out underwear. She felt exposed, vulnerable. The scars on her legs from years of working on her feet. The burn mark on her arm from the bakery oven. The roughness of her elbows. She was a map of hard labor. And she was standing in a palace. She walked to the tub. She climbed in. The water was hot. Perfect. It wrapped around her like a blanket. She sank down until the water touched her chin. She closed her eyes. For the first time that day, the pain in her ribs dulled to a manageable throb. She heard a stool scrape across the floor. She opened her eyes. Joon-ho was sitting next to the tub. He had rolled up his sleeves. This was the first time she saw them clearly. The tattoos. Ink crawled up his forearms. Dragons. Smoke. Waves. Dark, intricate patterns that disappeared under his white shirt. They were beautiful and terrifying. They marked him as a man of violence. A man who belonged to a tribe that didn't follow the law. He picked up a large, natural sea sponge. He dipped it into the water. "Lean forward," he said. "I can wash myself," Zosia said, sinking lower. "You can't reach your back," Joon-ho said, "and you will hurt your ribs if you try." He didn't wait for permission, but he didn't force her. He just held the sponge there, waiting. Zosia looked at him. His face was unreadable. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't leering. He looked like he was preparing for surgery. Focused. Serious. Slowly, inches at a time, Zosia sat up. The water cascaded off her dark skin. She turned her back to him, hugging her knees to her chest. She felt the sponge touch her shoulder blade. It was soft, soapy. He moved it in slow, circular motions. Swish, swish. The sound of the water was the only noise in the room. He washed her neck. He washed her shoulders. He washed the tension right out of her spine. He was thorough. He didn't rush. His hand, that large, tattooed hand that had shattered a man's knee an hour ago, brushed against her skin. The contrast was startling. His pale, inked fingers against the deep, rich tone of her back. He traced the line of her spine with his thumb. "You are too thin," he murmured. It wasn't an insult. It sounded like an observation of damage, like he was inspecting a car that hadn't been maintained. "You do not eat enough. Food costs money," Zosia mumbled into her knees. "Rent comes first." Joon-ho stopped washing. His hand rested flat on her back. The heat from his palm seeped into her bones. "Not anymore," he said. He moved the sponge down. He reached the spot on her side, where the boot had connected. The skin was already turning purple. Angry, ugly, Zosia flinched. Joon-ho froze. He tossed the sponge into the water. He cupped water in his hands and poured it gently over the bruise. Splash, splash. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Only when I breathe," Zosia said. "Then stop breathing for a moment," he said. He reached for a jar of balm on the edge of the tub. He scooped some out. It smelled of peppermint and arnica. He began to apply it to the bruise. His touch was feather-light. He was treating her like she was made of glass, like she was something precious that had been mishandled. Zosia watched his face in the reflection of the black marble wall. He was frowning. His jaw was tight. He looked furious, but not at her. "Why do you care?" Zosia asked softly. "You're a mobster. You hurt people for a living. Why does my bruise matter?" Joon-ho looked up. His eyes met hers in the reflection. "Because I hurt people who choose the game," he said. "Soldiers, gamblers, thieves. You did not choose the game, Zosia. You were just trying to live." He rinsed his hands in the water. "And because," he added, his voice dropping to a whisper, "you are mine. If you are holding your breath right now, wondering if he is going to kiss her or break something else, you need to like this video. Because this is the difference between a bad boy and a protector. A bad boy wants to use your body. A protector wants to heal it. Subscribe if you know the difference." Joon-ho picked up the sponge again. He moved to her arm. He saw the burn scar on her forearm, the shiny, puckered skin. He traced it with his finger. "How?" he asked. "One word. Oven," Zosia said. "Double shift. I was tired. I slipped." Joon-ho made a sound in his throat. A low growl. "Naso Jung-han." "Okay," he whispered. Zosia looked at him. "What?" He didn't translate. He just looked at the scar like he wanted to fight the oven that gave it to her. "My precious jade," he said in English, but the emotion was still in the Korean words. "Jade is hard. It does not break, but if you drop it, it chips." He gripped her hand. His fingers interlaced with hers. The calluses on her palm scraped against the smooth skin of his. "No more chips, Zosia," he said. "No more burns. No more bruises. I am retiring you from the war." Zosia looked at their joined hands. The water was cooling, but she felt warm. For the first time in her life, someone wasn't asking her for something. He wasn't asking for labor. He wasn't asking for sex. He wasn't asking for rent. He was giving. He was giving her care. She pulled her hand away gently. It was too much. The kindness was heavier than the cruelty. She knew how to handle cruelty. You hardened up. But kindness made you soft. And soft things got crushed. I can finish, Zosia said. Thank you. Joon-ho looked at her. He saw the wall go back up. He respected it. He stood up. He dried his hands on a towel. He rolled down his sleeves, covering the dragons, covering the violence. There is a nightgown on the vanity, he said. It is silk. It will not irritate your skin. He walked to the door. Sleep, Zosia, he said. The door locks from the inside. But remember, the only monster in this building is me, and I am sleeping down the hall. He closed the door. Zosia sat in the silence. The water rippled around her. She brought her knees up to her chin and wrapped her arms around herself. She touched the spot on her back, where his hand had been. It still tingled. Nay, Sojung-han. Okay, she whispered, testing the strange words on her tongue. She didn't know what it meant fully, but she knew how it felt. It felt like safety, and that terrified her more than the gun ever could. Zosia woke up panic-stricken. You know that feeling. The alarm didn't go off. You missed the bus. You're late for the shift. That adrenaline spike that hits before your eyes are even open. She sat up, gasping, her hand flying to her chest. But she wasn't in her studio apartment on 4th Street. She wasn't on the lumpy mattress she found on the curb 3 years ago. She was drowning in silk. Champagne-colored sheets, cool to the touch, slipping over her skin like water. The bed was huge. A California king. You could fit her entire apartment on this mattress. The light was different, too. In her apartment, the morning light was gray, filtered through a dirty alley window. Here, it was gold. Pure, unfiltered sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling glass, turning the dust motes into floating glitter. Zosia blinked. The memory of last night crashed into her. The mall, the kick, the car, the bath, the husband. She looked to her left. The pillow next to her was indented. Someone had slept there, but the sheets were cold. He was gone. She threw the covers off. She was wearing the silk nightgown he had left for her. It was beautiful, sliding over her curves, but it felt wrong. It felt like a costume. My clothes, she whispered. She needed her uniform. She needed her clogs. She needed to feel the rough denim of her own jeans. Those clothes were her armor. They were the only things she had bought with her own money. She walked to the door, on the far side of the room. It looked like a closet. She opened it, and she stopped breathing. It wasn't a closet. It was a boutique. Rows and rows of racks, dresses, blouses, trousers, coats, all arranged by color, all brand new. She walked in, her bare feet sinking into the plush white carpet. She touched a sleeve. Cashmere. She touched a skirt. Heavy, expensive wool. She pulled out a tag. Givenchy, Prada, Chanel. There were no prices, just sizes, and they were all her size. No, Zosia breathed. She backed away. This wasn't a gift. This was erasure. He was erasing Zosia, the waitress. He was painting over her. She started frantically searching the room, looking under the bed, looking in the drawers. Where are they? She panicked. Where are my shoes? She couldn't find them. Her dirty, worn-out clogs, her stained uniform, her mismatched socks. They were gone. She ran out of the bedroom. She burst into the main living area. The penthouse was filled with the smell of rich coffee and burning wood. Joon-ho was there. He was standing by the massive stone fireplace. He was wearing a black turtleneck and gray trousers. No jacket. He looked domestic. Dangerous, but domestic. He held a mug of coffee in one hand. In the other hand, he held her shoes, those ugly, beaten down, non-slip clogs. The soles were peeling. The leather was cracked. They were the shoes of a woman who stood for 12 hours a day for minimum wage. Don't, Zosia said, her voice cracking. She stopped in the middle of the room. Please, give them to me. I need them. Joon-ho looked at the shoes. Then he looked at her. He took in the silk nightgown, the way her hair fell wild around her shoulders. He looked pleased. "You need these?" he asked. He lifted the shoes. "These are broken, Zosia. They hurt your feet. I saw you limping last week." "They are mine," Zosia said fiercely. "I bought them. With my money. I worked for them." "And what did they give you?" Joon-ho asked. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Did they give you respect? Did they protect you from the man who kicked you? Or did they just help you stand there and take it?" Zosia trembled. "They are who I am." "No," Joon-ho said. "They are who you were." He turned to the fire. The flames were roaring, hungry and bright behind the glass screen. He opened the screen. The heat rushed out into the room. "Joon-ho, no!" Zosia screamed. She lunged forward, but she was too late. He tossed the shoes into the fire. Thump! Thump! They landed on the logs. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the rubber soles caught. Black smoke curled up. The leather hissed. The shoes, her symbols of survival, her trophies of poverty, began to melt. Zosia stopped. She stared at the fire. She felt like he had just thrown a piece of her soul in there. "Why?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you do that?" Joon-ho closed the screen. He turned to her. He set his coffee down and walked over. He didn't touch her. He just stood close enough that she had to look up, high up, "Because you keep trying to climb back down," he said. He pointed to the window, to the city far below. "You are used to the dirt, Zosia. You find comfort in the struggle, because it is all you know. But you are not down there anymore." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers smelled of wood smoke. "You walk on gold now, Zosia," he rumbled. "Get used to the altitude." He gestured to the hallway, back toward the closet full of designer clothes. "Get dressed," he commanded softly. "We have an appointment." "I'm not wearing those," Zosia said, wiping her face. "I look like a doll in them." "You look like a queen," Joon-ho corrected. "And tonight, you need to look like the woman who owns the man who runs this city. Wear the red one." He walked back to his coffee, and Zosia, she looked at him, hating him a little, loving him a little. "Don't mourn the shoes," he said, sipping his drink. "They were ugly anyway." The red dress wasn't just a dress. It was a weapon. It was silk, the color of fresh blood. It had long sleeves, a high neck, but the back plunged low, exposing the skin Joon-ho had washed the night before. It fit her like a second skin. Zosia stood in the elevator next to Joon-ho. She felt exposed. She felt like everyone would know she was a fraud, that underneath the silk she was just the cleaning lady. Joon-ho reached out. He took her hand. He didn't ask. He just took it. "Head up," he said, shoulders back. "Do not look at the floor. The floor is for people who serve. You do not serve anymore." The elevator opened. They weren't in a casino. This was a private room, the Viper Room. The air was thick with cigar smoke and tension. A round table sat in the center under a low-hanging light. 4 men were sitting there, stacks of chips, tumblers of whiskey. The conversation stopped the moment they walked in. Every eye turned to Zosia. Usually, when men looked at her, they looked through her, or they looked at her body with that hungry, disrespectful stare. But tonight, holding the hand of the dragon, they looked at her with fear. They stood up. All of them. Men in suits worth more than cars stood up because she walked in. "Mr. Park," one of them said, bowing slightly. Joon-ho didn't bow back. He guided Zosia to the chair at the head of the table. He pulled it out for her. "Gentlemen," Joon-ho said, his voice ice cold. "You know my wife." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a challenge. Zosia sat. The leather chair was soft. She looked across the table, and she froze. Sitting directly across from her Sweating through his gray suit was Councilman Dante Sr., the father of the boy who kicked her. He looked terrible, pale, shaking. He held a glass of scotch with 2 hands to keep it steady. "Mrs. Park," the councilman stammered. He didn't look her in the eye. He looked at the table. I didn't know." Joon-ho stood behind Zosia's chair. He placed one hand on her shoulder. His grip was heavy, possessive. It told everyone in the room, touch her and you die. "The councilman has had a difficult 24 hours, Joon-ho said pleasantly. His son had a nasty fall at the mall, shattered his knee, very tragic. The other men at the table stayed silent. They knew it wasn't a fall. And now," Joon-ho continued, "the councilman finds himself in a difficult position. He owes a debt, not money, but honor." Joon-ho tapped Zosia's shoulder. "Look at him, Zosia." Zosia looked at the powerful politician, the man who went on TV and talked about cleaning up the streets, the man whose son treated people like garbage. He looked small. "Mr. Dante," Joon-ho said, "my wife is thirsty. Pour her a drink." It was a small thing, a service. But in this world, power was about who served whom. The councilman stood up. His hands shook. He reached for the crystal pitcher of water. He walked around the table to Zosia. He poured the water into her glass. He spilled a little on the tablecloth because he was trembling so hard. "I am sorry," he whispered. "Not to the table," Joon-ho said. His voice dropped. The temperature in the room plummeted. "To her." The councilman looked at Joon-ho. He saw the death in the dragon's eyes. Slowly, painfully, the councilman lowered himself. He got down on one knee, right there on the plush carpet, the same way Zosia had been on her knees scrubbing the floor when his son kicked her. The room was deadly silent. If you are feeling the satisfaction right now, the absolute justice of seeing the oppressor kneel, you need to share this video. This is what it means to have a man who doesn't just fight for you, he rebalances the scales for you. "Mrs. Park," the councilman said, his voice thick with humiliation, "I apologize. For my son. For the disrespect. It will never happen again." Zosia looked down at him. She thought she would feel happy. She thought she would feel triumphant. But she didn't. She felt calm. She realized something in that moment. Joon-ho hadn't brought her here to gamble. He hadn't brought her here to show her off. He brought her here to show her the truth. These men weren't gods. They weren't better than her. They were just men, and they were afraid. She looked up at Joon-ho. He wasn't looking at the councilman. He was looking at her, waiting, giving her the choice. Zosia picked up the glass of water. She took a sip. "Tell your son," Zosia said, her voice steady, stronger than she ever thought it could be, "that the next time he sees a spill on the floor, he should clean it himself." The councilman flinched. "Yes, yes, ma'am." "Get up," Zosia said. The councilman scrambled to his feet and retreated to his chair. Joon-ho smiled. A real smile this time. Small, terrifying, and proud. He leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "Well done, my queen," he whispered. He sat down next to her and signaled the dealer. "Deal the cards," Joon-ho said. "My wife is feeling lucky." Zosia watched the cards slide across the felt. She touched the necklace under her dress. She touched the silk of her sleeve. She looked at Joon-ho's profile. The sharp jawline. The lethal focus. She realized then that she wasn't just a guest in his world. She wasn't just an observer. She was the reason the king was burning down the kingdom. And for the first time, she didn't want to run. She wanted to reign. Peace is expensive. And for a man like Joon-ho Park, the rent is always due. They had 3 days. 3 days of silk sheets, hot baths, and silence. 3 days where Zosia forgot what it felt like to be hungry. 3 days where Joon-ho forgot what it felt like to be hunted. But the world doesn't stop just because the king found a queen. It happened at 2 a.m. The phone on the nightstand didn't ring. It vibrated, a harsh drilling sound against the mahogany. Zosia woke up instantly. Old habits die hard. She was used to waking up for the 4 a.m. bus. She saw Joon-ho pick up the phone. He didn't say hello. He listened. His back was to her, and in the dim light of the city coming through the window, she saw his muscles tense. She saw the dragon wake up. "How much?" Joon-ho asked. His voice was different. The warmth was gone. It was steel again, cold, sharp. He listened for another second. "Burn the rest," he said. "Leave no witnesses." He hung up. He stood up and started dressing immediately. He pulled on tactical pants, a black shirt, a holster. "What is it?" Zosia whispered, sitting up, clutching the sheet. The fear was back. The bubble had popped. Joon-ho turned to her. He looked at her, but he didn't see her. He was seeing a war map in his head. "The Vipers," he said. "They hit the port. They burned a shipment of electronics, $4 million, and 2 of my men are dead." "Why?" Zosia asked. "Because they think I am weak," Joon-ho said, strapping a knife to his ankle. "They heard I got married. They heard I was spending days inside. They think the dragon is distracted." He looked at her then, and for a second, Zosia saw resentment, not at her, but at the situation. He hated that loving her made him vulnerable. "Get dressed," he ordered. "Pack a bag. Small, essentials only." "Where are we going?" "We are not going anywhere," Joon-ho said. "You are leaving." The air left the room. Zosia froze. "What?" "I am sending you to the country," Joon-ho said, moving around the room, gathering cash, passports, ammunition. "I have a safe house. It is off the grid. No internet. No phone lines. You will be safe there." "You're sending me away?" Zosia's voice trembled. "Alone? I cannot protect you here," Joon-ho said. "The city is about to burn, Zosia. If you stay, you are a target. If you stay, they will use you to get to me." He threw a duffel bag onto the bed. "Pack," he snapped. Zosia looked at the bag. Then she looked at him. The trauma hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't the wife anymore. She wasn't the queen. She was the problem. She was the clutter. She was the incompetent staff member that needed to be removed. "You're just like them," Zosia whispered. Joon-ho stopped. "What?" "You're just like the manager at the bistro," Zosia said, her voice rising. "I'm inconvenient now, right? So you fire me. You ship me off. You put me in a box somewhere until you decide you want to play house again. This is not about—" "It is," Zosia yelled. She stood up, letting the sheet fall. She didn't care about modesty. She was fighting for her worth. "You bought me. You cleaned me up. And now you're bored. Or I'm too much trouble. So you're abandoning me." Joon-ho crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed her shoulders, hard. "I am not abandoning you," he roared. The sound shook the glass walls. "I am trying to keep you alive. Do you think I want to send you away? Do you think I want to sleep in this bed alone, knowing you are miles away?" He shook her, just once. Desperate. "You are my weakness, Zosia. And right now, I cannot afford to be weak. If they take you, if they touch you." His voice broke. The monster looked terrified. "I would burn the entire world to ash to get you back. And I don't want to burn the world. I just want to live in it with you." He let her go. He stepped back. The wall was back up. "The car is downstairs," he said, his voice flat again. "Driver is waiting. Go." Zosia grabbed the bag. She grabbed the first clothes she found, jeans and a sweater. She didn't look at him. She couldn't. She walked to the door. "Zosia," he said. She stopped. "Don't come back. he said. "Not until I come for you. Promise me. Just don't die," she whispered, and she walked out. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen the dragon of Incheon sink to the floor, head in his hands, looking like a man who had just cut out his own heart. The safe house was a cabin. That's a nice way to put it. It was a bunker, dressed up as a log cabin, deep in the mountains, snow on the ground, trees that blocked out the sky. It was silent. No sirens, no neighbors, just the wind howling through the pines. Zosia had been there for 2 days. The driver had left her with a fridge full of food, a generator, and a warning. Don't open the door for anyone but Mr. Park. Zosia felt like a ghost. She paced the wooden floors. She looked out the reinforced windows. She touched the silver cross at her neck 1,000 times a day. Was he alive? Was he hurt? Was he with another woman? The doubt ate at her. The abandoned waitress inside her head was screaming. He used you. He played the hero. Now he's gone. She explored the cabin to keep from going crazy. Living room, kitchen, master bedroom, guest room, and then the basement door. It was locked. Heavy-duty deadbolt, not a normal interior door. But Zosia was a janitor once. She knew about keys. She knew that rich people were arrogant. They hid keys in stupid places because they thought no one would dare look. She checked the top of the door frame. Nothing. She checked under the mat. Nothing. She checked the fake plant in the hallway. Bingo! A small, silver key buried in the dry soil. Zosia held it up. Her hand was shaking. She shouldn't open it. She should trust him. But trust is earned. And he had sent her away. She put the key in the lock. The door creaked open. A set of stairs led down into the dark. The smell of ozone and electronics wafted up. Zosia walked down. She found a light switch at the bottom. Fluorescent lights buzzed to life. Zosia gasped. She dropped the key. It wasn't a storage room. It wasn't a wine cellar. It was a command center. Banks of servers hummed against the wall. And in the center, a desk with 6 monitors. They were off. But the wall was covered. Zosia walked toward it, her legs feeling like lead. Photos, hundreds of them, pinned to corkboards. She saw herself, but not the Zosia of this week. There was a photo of her 3 years ago, waiting for the bus in the rain. She was wearing a red coat she had found at a thrift store. There was a photo of her 2 years ago, eating a sandwich on her break behind the mall dumpsters. There was a photo of her father's funeral. She was standing alone at the grave. In the background of the photo, blurry but present, was a black car, an SUV, his SUV. Zosia turned to the monitors. She hit the power button on the main keyboard. The screens flickered to life. Camera 1. Interior, 4th St. apartment. It was her old studio, a live feed. It was empty now, dark and dusty, but the camera was positioned high, watching the bed. Camera 2. Exterior, bakery alley, the alley where she took her smoke breaks. Camera 3. Mall, food court. Zosia backed away, her hand over her mouth. He watched me, she whispered. He watched everything. It was sick. It was twisted. It was obsession. He hadn't just bought her debt. He had bought her life. He had been a voyeur to her suffering for 5 years. Monster, she sobbed. He's a monster. She turned to run, to get out of the house, to run into the woods and never look back. But then, her eyes caught something on the desk. A ledger. A black notebook. It was open. She shouldn't read it. She should run. But curiosity is a powerful thing. She walked back. She looked at the page. Date: November 12th. Entry: Subject: Zosia. Followed by 2 men from the docks. Possible traffickers. Intervened. Broken arm. Left assailant. Broken jaw, right assailant. Subject unaware. Safe. Zosia froze. She remembered that night. She thought she heard a fight in the alley, but she had run home. She never saw who it was. She turned the page. Date, December 24th. Entry, subject has no heat. Landlord refuses to fix boiler. Purchased building via shell company. Boiler replaced 4 a.m. Subject slept through it. Zosia remembered waking up sweating that Christmas morning. She thought it was a miracle. She turned the page again. Date, February 14th. Entry, subject crying at bus stop. No umbrella. Sent driver with umbrella. Instructed to say it was left behind by a customer. She smiled. It was worth the drive. Zosia looked at the wall again. She looked at the photos. Before, she saw a stalker. Now, she looked closer. In every photo, she was alone. But the angle of the photo, it was always from a position of protection. From a car parked nearby. From a rooftop overlooking her walk. He wasn't watching her to own her. He was watching her because he couldn't be with her. She found a jar on the corner of the desk. It was labeled Zosia's Tip Jar. Inside were receipts, Western Union transfers, anonymous cash drops to the bakery where she worked. Zosia remembered the days she got extra tips. The days a customer would leave $100 bill for a coffee and leave before she could say thanks. It was him, she realized. Tears streamed down her face, hot and fast. It was always him. She sank into the chair. She looked at the monitors. She looked at the empty apartment where she had struggled and starved. She realized that she had never really been alone, not once. When she was cold, he fixed the heat. When she was threatened, he broke bones in the dark. When she was broke, he sent money. He was a monster. Yes, he invaded her privacy. He broke the law. He watched her like a possession. But he was her monster. This is the moment, ladies. The moral conflict. Is it creepy? Yes. Is it illegal? Absolutely. But ask yourself this. In a world that ignored her, in a world that kicked her, he saw her. He witnessed her. He protected her. If you just realized that you would forgive the stalking if it meant that kind of safety, you are not alone. Tell me in the comments, is this love or is this madness? And hit subscribe, because Zosia is about to make a choice. Zosia wiped her face. She looked at the screen showing her old apartment. She reached out and turned it off. She didn't need him to watch her on a screen anymore. She stood up. She wasn't running. She wasn't leaving. She walked back up the stairs. She went to the front door. She unlocked it. She stood on the porch, looking out at the snowy forest. She waited. Because she knew something now. She knew Joon-ho. He wouldn't just send her here and leave her. He was watching. He was out there, somewhere in the trees, making sure the vipers didn't get close. "Come out, Joon-ho," she whispered to the wind. "I know you're there." And she smiled. A sad, knowing smile. She loved the monster, and God help anyone who tried to hurt him. Zosia stood on the porch of the cabin. The snow was falling, silent and heavy. She held the keys in her hand. Not the keys to the house. The keys to the SUV parked around the back. The bodyguard, a man named Silas, was inside, making coffee. He thought she was broken. He thought she was a frightened civilian woman hiding from the big bad wolf. He underestimated her. Everyone always did. That was her superpower. Zosia walked back inside. She didn't sneak. She walked loud. Silas turned around. "Miss Park, you shouldn't be near the door." "We are leaving," Zosia said. Her voice wasn't shaking anymore. Silas laughed. A short, dismissive puff of air. "No, ma'am." Mr. Park gave strict orders. "We stay until the all clear. The city is a war zone right now." "I know," Zosia said. She walked up to him. "That's why we're going." I can't do that, Silas said, stepping forward, his bulk filling the hallway. My job is to keep you alive. You step foot an inch on right now. You're a liability. Liability. There it was again. The idea that she was just baggage. Zosia didn't argue. She didn't beg. She remembered the monitors. She remembered the years Joon-ho had spent watching her fight off drunks, landlords, and poverty. She was a survivor. She looked at the gun on Silas's hip. Silas, she said calm. Do you know why Joon-ho married me? Silas blinked, confused by the change of subject. Ma'am? He married me because I know how to endure, Zosia said. And right now, my husband is alone. He thinks he has to protect me by pushing me away. He thinks I'm weak. She took a step closer. If you don't drive me back, she whispered, I will walk. And if I walk, I will freeze. And when Joon-ho finds out you let his wife freeze to death in the woods because you were too scared to drive a car, what do you think he will do to you? Silas went pale. He knew the dragon. He knew the cruelty. It's a suicide mission, Silas warned. Then get in the car, Zosia said, and let's go die together. The drive back was a blur of gray highway and nerves. Zosia sat in the passenger seat. She didn't look at her phone. She looked at the city skyline growing on the horizon. The obsidian tower stood in the center. It was dark, too dark. Something's wrong, Silas said, gripping the wheel. The perimeter lights are out. Take me to the service entrance, Zosia said. The front is. Not the front, Zosia snapped. The back. The loading dock on 5th. The garbage collection point. Silas looked at her. Why? Because nobody looks at the garbage, Zosia said. I know. I used to take it out. They arrived at the alley. It was blocked by a black van. Men were standing by the door. Vipers. They were smoking, holding rifles loosely. They weren't expecting anyone to sneak in. They were waiting for people to run out. Silas killed the engine. We can't get past them. Zosia looked at the men. Then she looked at the service door behind them. Stay here, Zosia said. Are you crazy? Zosia opened the door. If I'm not back in 2 minutes, leave. She stepped out into the cold alley. She wasn't wearing the red dress. She was wearing jeans and a dark coat. She pulled her hair back. She hunched her shoulders. She transformed. She didn't walk like a queen. She walked like a weary, invisible worker. She kept her head down. She walked right toward the Vipers. Hey, one of them shouted. Get lost. Area's closed. Zosia flinched, a practiced movement. Sorry, sir. Just trying to get to the bus stop. My boss let me out late. She put on the voice. The please don't hurt me. I'm nobody voice. The guard looked at her. He saw a tired black woman in cheap clothes. He didn't see a threat. He didn't see the wife of the man they were trying to kill. He saw background noise. Walk around, he spat, turning his back on her to light a cigarette. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Zosia shuffled past him. She got to the corner, and the moment she was out of his sight line, she moved. She didn't go to the bus stop. She slipped into the cracked side door of the laundry chute room. She knew the code. 1984. It was the year the building was built. She learned it 3 years ago when she covered a shift for a janitor friend. She was in. She was inside the fortress, and she was coming for her husband. The penthouse was a slaughterhouse. The elevator was disabled. Zosia had climbed 20 flights of service stairs. Her lungs were burning. Her ribs were screaming, but she didn't stop. She reached the service entrance to the penthouse. It opened into the pantry, behind the kitchen. She heard them before she saw them. Gunfire, pop, 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 and the sound of glass shattering. Zosia peeked through the crack in the door. The living room, the beautiful room with the white sofas and the onyx bar, was destroyed. The glass walls were spiderwebbed with bullet holes. Joon-ho was behind the heavy oak desk. He was pinned down. There were 5 men in the room. Vipers. They were moving tactically, closing the net. "Come out, dragon," one of them yelled. "It's over. We know the bitch is gone. You have nothing left." Joon-ho didn't answer. He fired 2 shots. One Viper went down, but he was out of ammo. Zosia heard the click-click of an empty chamber. The Vipers heard it too. They laughed. They stood up from their cover. "Goodbye, Mr. Park." Zosia stepped out of the pantry. She didn't have a gun. She didn't have a knife. She stood in the open kitchen, bathed in the emergency lighting. "Hey!" she yelled. The Vipers turned. All 4 of them. They saw her. And they paused. They were confused. They expected a bodyguard. Or a cop. They saw a woman in jeans, looking terrified. "Who the hell is that?" one of them asked. "Just the maid," another sneered. "Ignore her. Kill him. Ignore her." That was their mistake. That was the mistake Dante made. That was the mistake the world made. They looked back at Joon-ho. Zosia ran. Not to Joon-ho, but to the wall panel near the fridge. She had cleaned this room. She knew what this panel was. It wasn't the lights. It wasn't the thermostat. It was the commercial fire suppression system for the kitchen. Halon gas and high-pressure foam. Designed to put out a grease fire in seconds. She smashed the glass cover with her elbow. She slammed her hand on the big red button. Hiss. The sound was deafening. Jets of white, chemical fog exploded from the ceiling. It wasn't just smoke. It was a thick, suffocating cloud that filled the room instantly. The Vipers started coughing. They couldn't see their hands in front of their faces. "I can't see. I can't see. Fire! Who hit the alarm?" They were blind, disoriented. But Joon-ho? Joon-ho knew the layout of his own home. And more importantly, he knew Zosia. He didn't hesitate. Zosia pressed herself against the floor, covering her mouth with her shirt to breathe. She heard the movement. Fast. Brutal. The dragon was hunting in the mist. He didn't need eyes. He moved by sound. He moved by rage. It took 30 seconds. One by one, the bodies hit the floor. Then, silence. The hiss of the gas stopped. The fog began to settle, drifting low like a graveyard mist. Zosia coughed, her eyes stinging. She stood up slowly. A figure emerged from the white cloud. Joon-ho. He was covered in blood, not his own. His shirt was torn. He held a combat knife in one hand. He looked like a demon rising from hell. He scanned the room. Wild, frantic. "Zosia?" he croaked. "I'm here," she whispered. He dropped the knife. He crossed the room. He didn't walk. He scrambled. He grabbed her. He checked her arms, her face, her chest. His hands were shaking violently. "You came back," he breathed. "You stupid, reckless woman. You came back." He gripped her shoulders. His eyes were wide, manic. The fear was pouring off him now. The fear of losing her. "I told you to run," he yelled, shaking her. "I told you to stay away. You could have died. Do you understand? They would have killed you." He was furious. He was terrifying. He was yelling in her face, his fear turning into aggression. "I gave you an order," he roared. "Why didn't you listen?" Slap. The sound echoed through the ruined penthouse. Zosia's hand stung. She had slapped him. Hard. Right across the face. Joon-ho froze. His head turned to the side. The red mark of her hand bloomed on his pale cheek, right over a smear of blood. The silence was absolute. Zosia didn't back down. She stood her ground, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing with fire. "I am not your soldier," she hissed. She poked him in the chest, hard. "And I am not your child. I am your wife, Joon-ho. I am your partner. You do not send me away. You do not protect me by making me leave." She grabbed his shirt, pulling him down to her level. "I spent my whole life being invisible. being ignored, being told to stand in the corner while the important people talked. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the soot. "Don't you dare," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "Don't you ever send me away again. I would rather die in this room with you than live in that cabin without you." Joon-ho stared at her. He looked at the fire in her eyes. He looked at the woman who had just walked into a gunfight armed with nothing but a cleaning code. The anger drained out of him. His knees gave out. He collapsed against her, burying his face in her neck. He wrapped his arms around her waist, holding on for dear life. "I thought I lost you," he choked out. The dragon was crying. "I thought I lost you." Zosia wrapped her arms around his bloody shoulders. She held him tight. "You can't lose me," she whispered into his hair. "I'm the stain on the floor. Remember? You can't scrub me out. This is the moment." The shift. Listen to the sound of them breathing. Two broken people in a broken room. Zosia just proved something vital. She isn't just the thing he protects. She is the thing that protects him. She saved the king, not with a gun, but with her wits, with the very skills the world looked down on. If you've been waiting for the moment where they become equals, this is it. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to know that being soft doesn't mean being weak. And stay tuned, because the war isn't over. And now they are going to finish it together. The sirens were distant now, just red and blue lights flashing against the broken glass of the penthouse windows. The police were downstairs, but they wouldn't come up. Not yet. They knew the rules. When the dragon cleaned house, you waited for the invite. Joon-ho and Zosia sat on the floor of the ruined living room. Joon-ho was leaning against the onyx bar, his legs stretched out. He was bleeding from a cut above his brow. His knuckles were raw, split open from the violence he had inflicted on the vipers. Zosia sat next to him. She wasn't shaking anymore. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a strange, heavy clarity. She reached out and took his hand. His right hand, the hand that had shattered a knee at the mall, the hand that had snapped necks in the mist. "You're hurt?" she whispered. "It is not my blood," Joon-ho said. His voice was hoarse, exhausted. He looked at her, really looked at her. He touched her face with his uninjured hand, smearing a little bit of soot on her cheek. "5 years," he murmured. Zosia looked at him. "Why did you wait, Joon-ho? If you loved me, if you watched me, why did you let me sleep in the cold for 5 years?" This was the question, the wound that hadn't healed. Joon-ho closed his eyes. He leaned his head back against the bar. "Because look at this room, Zosia," he said, gesturing to the bullet holes. "The bodies, the destruction. This is my life. This is what I am. I am violence. I am death. I am the thing that wakes up at 3 a.m. to murder." He opened his eyes. They were wet. "I looked at you, Zosia, in the photos. You were poor, you were tired, but you were light. You were clean. You went to work. You bought bread. You laughed with the old woman at the bus stop." He squeezed her hand. "I wanted you to have that," he whispered. "I wanted you to have the sun. I didn't want to drag you into my shadow," I told myself. "Let her be free. Let her be poor, but let her be safe from me." Zosia listened. She understood. He thought he was being noble. He thought he was saving her from himself. "But then," Joon-ho continued, his voice cracking, "I saw the shoes." "The shoes?" "The clogs," he said. "The holes in them. I saw you taping them up with duct tape because you couldn't afford new ones. I saw the way you limped. I saw the way men looked at you like you were nothing." He turned to her, his gaze intense. "And I realized I wasn't saving you. I was letting the world eat you alive. I was letting you suffer because I was too afraid to be selfish." He brought her hand to his lips. I decided I would rather be a monster who holds you, he vowed, than a saint who watches you bleed. Zosia looked at him. She looked at the blood on his knuckles, the red evidence of his love. She realized she didn't want the sun. The sun burned her. The sun exposed her poverty. She wanted the shadow. Because in the shadow, she was the queen. She lifted his hand. She didn't wipe the blood away. She leaned down, and she kissed his knuckles, right over the open wound. She tasted the iron. She tasted the violence, and she didn't pull away. I don't want to be safe from you, Joon-ho, she whispered against his skin. I want to be dangerous with you. Joon-ho shuddered. It was the moment of total surrender, not hers to him, but both of them to the darkness. He pulled her into a kiss. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. It was a seal on a new contract, one written not in ink, but in blood. The waitress was gone. The Mafia queen had arrived. 2 weeks later. The penthouse was fixed. Money is a wonderful eraser. The glass was replaced. The blood was scrubbed. The bodies were gone. It was Sunday morning. Zosia was sitting on the white leather sofa. She was wearing a silk robe, black this time. She held a cup of coffee. She looked out at the city. It looked different from up here now. It didn't look scary. It looked like a kingdom. Joon-ho was in the shower. She could hear the water running. Ding dong. The doorbell. Zosia frowned. The doorman usually called up. She stood up and walked to the door. Her bare feet made no sound on the marble. She opened it. No one was there. Just a large manila envelope lying on the doormat. There was no stamp. No return address. Just one word written in sharp, feminine handwriting. Zosia. She picked it up. It felt light. She walked back into the living room. She shouldn't open it. She should wait for Joon-ho. But the name on the front, it was personal. She slid her finger under the flap. Rip. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a medical document. A lab report from the Incheon General Hospital. DNA paternity test results. Zosia's heart stopped. She scanned the names. Alleged father, Joon-ho Park. Child, Han Sol male, age 4. Mother, Ji-yoon Kim. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. The coffee cup slipped from Zosia's hand. Smash. Hot coffee splashed over her ankles. The white rug stained brown. But she didn't feel the heat. She felt cold. Ice cold. 4 years old. Joon-ho said he had been watching her for 5 years. He said he was waiting for her. He said he was lonely. He said he was protecting her from afar. But 4 years ago, he was with her. Ji-yoon Kim. He had a son he never mentioned. A son he hid while he was busy watching Zosia. The shower turned off. Zosia stood there, the paper shaking in her hand. The betrayal was worse than the contract. The contract was business. This was a lie. Joon-ho walked into the room. He was wearing a towel low on his hips. He was drying his hair. He looked relaxed, happy. Zosia? He asked, seeing the broken cup. Are you hurt? Don't move. The glass. He stopped. He saw the paper in her hand. His face went pale. The color drained right out of him. The dragon looked struck. Zosia, he said, his voice dropping. Don't read that. It's a little late, Zosia said. Her voice wasn't loud. It was dead. She looked up at him. The man who claimed to know her every breath. The man who said she was the only thing he cared about. You told me you were watching me, Zosia said. She took a step forward, crushing the broken china under her bare foot. She didn't flinch. She held up the paper. You said you were watching me, she hissed, her eyes cold as winter. So tell me, Joon-ho, who was watching her? Does Joon-ho have a secret family? Is the test real, or is this another game by the Vipers to break them apart? And what is Zosia going to do now that she knows the king has an heir that isn't hers. This story isn't over. In fact, the war has just begun. If you want part 2 immediately, I need you to destroy the like button. Let's get this video to 5,000 likes, and I will drop the next episode where Zosia meets the other woman. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. You do not want to be late for the fallout.